So, could you describe some examples and sources of environmental racism in your district and say how they have affected OUSD students, parents, and educators? What commitments can you make towards combating the disproportionate impacts of pollutant exposures on OUSD students, parents, and educators?
Yes, so that, as you guys know, has happened in McClymonds. Not only this time, but with the lead in the water. When I've been to go visit McClymonds, not only with the lead in the water, some of the classrooms, they don't have heat. It's not an environment it's not a supported environment for our students to thrive. If they're not thriving, it's not a supporting environment for our teachers to help to thrive as well. And so, give me a second because I need to read this one more time. Um, it it has I've seen it affect McClymonds. And the message that goes out is because I wasn't in their place, but just being a high school student at Skyline at that time and having a permanent substitute teacher, just imagine if you're in a classroom that that you now have to uproot and move because of the environmental racism that's going on with water. Parents are afraid for their children. When I went to the community meeting, they didn't want their their children to go back into McClymonds campus. And I understand that fear. And so what the message that they're sending out of by not getting in front of it, they're saying they're getting in front of it, but not getting way in front of it and protecting our students. By protecting our students, you're protecting our parents. By protecting our parents, we're protecting the teachers. And so what they're doing is they're sending a message of I don't care about you. I don't, and that could have effects down the road. And so the thing is that my commitment to combating that, one, like I said, I'm about bringing the community together. We need to figure out, my commitment is about protecting them. And now look like, I'm not sure yet, but I would involve, instead of having a community meeting and saying this is what we're going to do, I would have, again, groups together saying how can we protect our students, because that's my main objective running for board. It's not just for me, it's about protecting our students and giving them a voice. So what I would do is, one, to connect with them, bringing the outside resources in and bringing them back into the community and figuring how we can protect our students. And so that it's pretty tricky. This is a pretty tricky situation that going to the meetings with McClymonds and visiting McClymonds and understanding that there has been when I went to community meetings, parents were saying, using the word, this is trauma of what has happened in the past. And hearing that word, I sympathize with that, and we need to be delicate of how to handle this situation and how to protect our kids, because if it is traumatic, they're going to need a lot of support and help. And that does not mean just one person alone. That means everybody is going to come and have to rally around these children that have just been uprooted and changed in their campus. So that is, it's definitely environmental racism. Definitely. It's something that needs to be changed.
I'm going to read it. Could you describe some examples and sources of environmental racism in your district and say how they have affected OUSD students, parents, and educators? What commitments can you make towards combating the disproportionate impacts of pollutant exposures on OUSD students, parents, and educators?
Yeah, I mean, this is top of mind for people that live in District 3 because of the extreme situations that they are facing with the post-industrial waste that exists mostly in West Oakland, or at least a lot of it is in West Oakland. I guess there's also places in East Oakland where that's also a problem. I think this is something it's imperative that the district look very long and hard at how we locate schools and what kinds of efforts we make to really mitigate some of these kinds of environmental risks that have been known for a long time. I mean, the situation in McClymonds is not new. This particular finding was new, but there have been other issues with McClymonds that have gone on for a long time, and that definitely impacts a community that is already facing a lot of hardship and difficulty because of where they live. They live in an area where they're being exposed a lot of times to the same kinds of issues that they're exposed to when they're at McClymonds. So I think the district has a responsibility to do something around that. I think the district also has a responsibility to hold the state and other entities accountable for the kinds of cleanup that are necessary to make these school campuses safe. And it goes beyond the school campuses. I think the district can be a partner with the city in holding other entities accountable for cleanup around the neighborhoods and the communities where people are living, where the same challenges exist that exist at McClymonds. So I think we need to really think long and hard about how we put kids in the face, how they face the kinds of environmental dangers that they face by this location of this particular school and several other schools in West Oakland and East Oakland.
Thank you.
Could you describe some examples and sources of environmental racism in your district and say how they have affected OUSD students, parents, and educators? What commitments can you make towards combating the disproportionate impacts of pollutants exposures on OUSD students, parents, and educators?
Okay, so just recently we've had an issue with issues of toxicity and a report of a TCE being on the McClymonds campus, which brought about a larger issue of the areas of environmental inequities throughout the district, and that are still present, that have been there prior to our redlinings of the districts. And it was shocking and it was jarring to see that. And it wasn't transparent enough for teachers, parents, or staff, or students. And I believe moving forward with it, that we have to be transparent about where our ecological toxicities are within our school sites, with the proximity. What are we going to actively be doing? Which means that moving forward, that we will need to have strong nursing staffs on a lot of our school sites that are licensed physicians who are able to treat and prescribe, and they see anything that has to do with like running, constant runny noses, bloody noses, issues with breathing, etc. We need to have them on site for that. I think it's very foolish to move forward and like none of this ever happened with our communities. We have to be very transparent and actively say that this is what the safeguards that we have here for your students. This is a Medicare and facility sites that we'll be able to help them with, not only for our students, but our staff and our support staff, our necessities that are around them. We have to move forward and just be, this is what it is, and this is what we're going to be moving forward. And we need to have a place where even for students who are in higher grade levels to have internships, so they can go to the EPAs, they can find out state representatives, they can figure out what are these things and needs that are happening within the community, so they have a feel and a stake of how they're better being helped and represented and supported throughout the district, and to support other students as well.
Thank you.
So next question, could you describe some examples and sources of environmental racism in your district and talk a little about how they have affected OUSD students, parents, and educators? And what commitments can you make toward combating the disproportionate impacts of pollutant exposure on OUSD students, parents, and educators?
I'll start the time whenever you're ready.
Oh, okay. I was waiting for that a little bit. Thank you for that question. So again, I will start with my experience in San Francisco, and then I will cross the bridge and talk about Oakland, which is definitely primary to you. I taught at the school in the Bayview community of San Francisco's the southeast side, Gloria Davis, which was a middle school. It was surrounded by 4 of the city projects, housing projects, and it was also surrounded by 2 freeways, a PG&E power plant, a water treatment plant, and the shipyard of the Navy shipyard in San Francisco. This is where my school was located when I started teaching. Then I moved over to to Thurgood Marshall High School in the same community. I have dealt with environmental racism for more than half of my career. I've seen students come in with asthma, with headaches, with dizziness, with fatigue. I've seen the impact. Now I know that over in Oakland, you've been going through the same thing. McClimates is definitely the latest of many particular environment communities that have been hurt, and public schools have been hurt. The toxic water under there, and now they're shutting down the school. So that is a really concern because the public has not had a chance to engage that conversation. So I think that, you know, as a public in Oakland, we really have to stay attuned to the environmentals of all areas around the school and all schools located in closely neighboring environmental risk. It is unfair that the city of Oakland, the Oakland School District, will not engage the parents before something happens. They usually wait until after it happens. And as the board member, I will make that my priority.
Thank you.
Could you describe some examples and sources of environmental racism in your district and say how they have affected OUSD students, parents, and educators? And what commitments can you make towards combating the disproportionate impacts of pollutant exposure on OUSD students, parents, and educators?
Wow, this is designed for District 3. And especially, I guess I'm going to jump in. One of the most blatant examples at the moment is McClimates. And the most blatant example of the racism there is that there was money about 12 years ago that was allocated for doing a whole cleanup of everything around McClimates. Because it is in West Oakland and it is industrial. And they took that money and they spent it on downtown, which of course means nothing. I mean, we don't have a lasting office there. It just into the ether and nothing happened for McClimates. What they found now, I think, is an excuse. I don't think that it's really as unsafe as they are pretending to suddenly make it. I see what's happening now because the only contamination they've found is in the vapor in the boiler room in one little place, and and it's not in any of the places the kids would be. So what that sounds to me is like there's also they want to close down McClimates, and so now it's going to always have this name that's associated with, oh, that's the poison school. And so that's going to force kids to go to the charter schools, and because they're trying to open up a charter high school in West Oakland. And it's just yet another part of Jamoke Hinton Hodges' legacy of privatizing all of District 3. And that's just not acceptable at all, that McClymonds has to be completely supported. We need to encourage a consistent support for the academic programs at McClymonds. They at one point had a great sort of culinary academy, but the district refused to give them kitchen. I mean, it's how they have been so undermined for years. And I'm so glad that West Oakland Middle School still exists and is still there fighting with wonderful, wonderful teachers, because it's an uphill battle all the way against not just the historical legacy of the fact that this is a polluted neighborhood, but also the problem that the district itself has been attacking the public schools there and coming up with this cockamamie idea that the charters are better, which they're clearly not. So that's one. It also exists in other places. The just the lack of care, the lack of investment in schools in East Oakland, in deep East Oakland. And it's not that the custodians are not doing their jobs. They're doing as much as they can, but we need to actually put money into improving the schools in terms of just basic major expenditures for upkeep. You just have to do that. You can't build something and just let it fall apart and then say, oh, now we're going to tear it down. I'm what's in my head is Korematsu and Esperanza right now. There are plenty of places that need to have work done, and the only ones that get improved upon, and now I guess I'm focusing too much on the actual plants, but it's also that everything that makes schools absolutely wonderful in terms of teachers for art and music and the extra help, those are all being financed in the Hill schools by parents. So that we need to make that go away. You can't have only the parents who are wealthy or have, cars that are good enough to make it up the hills every day. They cannot have the right to have an education that is better than the kids in the flatlands. And that's just completely wrong and always has been. And of course, the best thing would be to go back to community neighborhood schools, because this idea of people spending their lives driving their kids long distances, or kids themselves. I taught at Oakland Tech for most of my time.
We actually have to move over to the next question.
Okay.
The 2 minutes are
okay.
Okay.